Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. The first story of the day I'm pretty excited about because I'm a big fan of theme parks. And it was just announced that for this Halloween at Universal Studios Orlando, they are going to build a cabin in the woods. That's right, from the popular film that Joss Whedon produced and I believe Drew Goddard directed, they are going to build the forest, the woods, I guess, the cabin in the woods that surrounds the cabin, the actual cabin, and get this, the facility that's underneath the cabin. I don't want to go into it too much more because I don't want to have spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Cabin in the Woods. I really liked Cabin in the Woods. I didn't love it though as much as some other people have. I still feel Scream is the best meta horror film, but I thought there was a lot of potential there, and clearly, the studio does as well. Because if Universal Studios is willing to put this kind of money into this attraction, which if they're going to go through this kind of effort, I can't believe they would take down after the Halloween nights. Maybe they will to make sure you go during the time period. It's going to run Halloween this year down in Orlando, but maybe they're thinking of continuing with the franchise, which would be very interesting. So I think that's wonderful. I think I've always been a fan of Universal's Horror Nights. I've been to a few of them, especially out in Los Angeles. And they really do a great job, a great immersive experience. I think events like this are what's helping Halloween become such a big event. It's second only to Christmas in terms of consumer spending. And when you can buy a ticket to something like this, who wouldn't take out their wallet? And Universal does a particularly good job. I remember doing a walkthrough one year when they had, created like a plane crash in their back lot, and they just do a great job. They really use the movie magic. So, but this sounds like their best experience yet. And I'm gonna be impressed and surprised to see just how into detail they go. But if they go all the way, I think it could really pay off for them, both as a theme park attraction and in helping to build the franchise. So if you live in the Orlando area, go watch Cabin in the Woods. Or if you're going to the Orlando area, or you might go now, go rent Cabin in the Woods so that you can so you'll know what you're looking at when you go and watch the movie, when you go to the experience. And also, I think you should know, slight spoiler, Merman is said to be making an appearance at the event. So I think that's great. So be sure to write down below if you would like to go to something like that, and also what your coolest Halloween, maze or experience has been. I even went to like a haunted house here in New York City where they had taken over like an abandoned house and did a walkthrough, which was pretty creepy. But they had like a trivia question. I think it was about film actually, and I was like, I raised my hand and answered it. So that's what I remember about the tour. Not getting scared, but getting the trivia question right. All right, so the second story for the day, I think a lot of people probably saw this coming. A lot of people hoped it wouldn't be coming. It's that once again Christian Bale has reiterated that he's not going to be in a Justice League movie. He says he's not turning it down. He hasn't even been asked. I always take these kinds of comments with a grain of salt because, I feel there's always a check out there big enough when it comes to talent. Look at Robert Downey Jr. I think, if a studio wants it bad enough, that they can bring the talent back, I feel. I think it's more interesting that Warner Brothers hasn't approached him. However, again, I still think, I think a lot of people are drawing definitive comments from this, but I feel, based on what's happening at Warner Brothers, that they've lost Jeff Robinov, who has the creative relationships with, Nolan and Snyder and Affleck and other, Lerman, but, specifically regarding the DC Cinematic Universe, Nolan and Snyder were there through Robinov. To have him leave, but then also have Legendary Pictures, which I also discussed recently, the production company behind those movies, leave the studio. I think that nobody, not even the people at Warner Brothers at the highest levels, know what the DC Cinematic Universe is going to look like and where it's going. I don't think Bale is off the table by any means. I'm sure that's still a card they feel they can play over at Warner Brothers, and I think they're probably more concerned with getting their house in order at this point. What this does to the potential of a Justice League movie, I think it really puts it far off down the line. I think that Man of Steel is the smart move to do a sequel to that, and I think since my review, I've felt they should bring in a new creative team. And some of you have said, well, why are you then, sounding the alarm about the departure of the creative talent if you want new creative talent? And that's because I feel that, Snyder, I'm sure he's a very nice guy. I talked to him on the red carpet. He was very polite. He was nice. I thought he gave really great answers. But at the same time, I feel he just doesn't deliver on screen. I think his work is not consistently good across the board. So while I don't worry about him leaving. If I were a Warner Brothers executive, I would have sleepless nights over the idea of losing Christopher Nolan. I think he's built a strong home at that studio and really gave them to a large degree a large part of their identity. So that would be a big loss for them. And his name does bring people in. As I said when I did Movie Math that the week after the Man of Steel opened, people trust Christopher Nolan. They don't trust Warner Brothers. I don't think they trust DC movies at this point. They trust Christopher Nolan. Whether or not he to some degree hurt that trust with Man of Steel, because some people didn't like it. I know a lot of you loved it, but you have to admit some people didn't. It remains to be seen. But still, people went into the theater for the name Nolan. Speaking of names in Hollywood that really matter, it's hard to find one that matters as much as Disney. Back in the day when Walt Disney was alive, I'm a big Walt Disney fan, by the way. I've read all of his biographies. I really have studied what he built because, he's, I think, a tremendous entrepreneur and artistic voice. It's rare to find such a great combination of business sense and artistry. Now, to some degree, Roy Disney, his brother, brought in a lot of that business sense, but that was really the running of the company and allowing Walt to do what he wanted to do. But a lot of times you have a great artist who doesn't understand the audience or doesn't want to, doesn't prioritize that. I think Walt Disney was a great American artist and that's what made him such a successful Hollywood artist, which is different than like a fine art artist, was that he understood the audience and he cared about the audience. That's the whole reason he built Walt Disney World. But anyway, there was an interesting interview in a Hollywood Reporter this week with Alan Horn, who used to run Warner Brothers, and now he runs Disney. He took over when they fired Ross Ritchie. Ross Ritchie over the debacle. I know Rich Ross is the head of Boom Studios, who publishes my comic Superbia. So that's why I always get them mixed up a little bit. But anyway, Alan Horn took over for Ross Ritchie when he was fired for the John Carter debacle. So they were interviewing him, and it wasn't a particularly great interview because it was a lot of the same canned answers, and I can't tell you, actually when I went to film school, I stopped going to, when they had speakers come, I stopped going because I was like, you're not telling me anything. This is a waste of my time. You're just, giving me white noise. So this was kind of a white noise interview, except for one of the last questions, and that's why I bring it up. They said, well, would you ever, all this talent is leaving Warner Brothers, presumably with the exodus of Legendary and Robinov. You had a good relationship with Ben Affleck. Would you ever consider having him come over to Disney? And Alan Horn said, I have to say, I don't know if he would be a fit here because, Argo, great movie, but that really wouldn't fit with the Disney brand. Some of the choices that were made, the language choices, I just don't think that's a fit. And that really struck me as interesting on two levels. The first was, who on earth would say they would not want to work with an Oscar-winning director? Argo, was a very realistic depiction of something a real-life event. People swear in real life. I don't remember very strong language from Argo. I wasn't like, wow, what a dirty movie. It wasn't like Quentin Tarantino. Who would turn down to make such a film that was so highly regarded by audiences and by critics and the Academy? It just seems crazy to me for some kind of like, intangible idea of what a Disney movie is. And that was the second thing that interested me. What is a Disney movie today? They took off Walt from the company name. It's just Disney now. And I think that, I think that all their purchases make a great bottom line. I'm talking about like Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and they have just been named, as I mentioned in Movie Math yesterday, they've been regarded by financial analysts as the biggest media conglomerate in the world. Yay, that's wonderful. But at what price? What price to the company? Not just in terms of dollars and cents, and they bring in a lot of money, but I think they are some degree diluting the Disney brand, because you have to ask yourself, what does Disney stand for? Is Disney just, a fence that ties in all these great properties, or is there still like a Disney quality? Now, I do have to say that during like the 70s, when after Walt's death, when Disney was in trouble, even towards, I think, the end of Walt's career, I think a Disney movie became a little stale. I don't think it, was like the front, the cutting edge of artistic merit anymore. And I think when people think of a Disney movie or what a Disney movie is, sometimes that's their initial reaction, and so that's why they move away from it. But don't forget that Mary Poppins was, an Oscar winner, a hugely cutting edge for its time, a huge box office hit, and really a game changer. It made Julie Andrews a star, and they're going to be covering that movie in Saving Mr. Banks this holiday season, where Tom Hanks is playing Walt Disney, going behind the scenes of making that film and how it was so difficult dealing with. I think her name P.L. Travers, played by Emma Thompson, who wrote the book, and she didn't get along with Walt Disney because she didn't like to some degree what a Disney film was. So I thought that was interesting. The evolution of the company of Disney Studios, what they stand for today, and the fact that they, I don't think that there's anything that should allow you not to value great filmmaking. I think Disney shouldn't be so box themselves in with this antiquated idea of what a Walt Disney movie is, which, by the way, I feel is incorrect. I feel a Walt Disney movie is not this antiquated time machine thing. Walt Disney was always at the head of the curve and always looking for new ways to do storytelling. Is silly. So I don't know. I wish that I wish that Walt Disney had done a better job. Looking at his daughters as apprentices rather than. He was a product of his time, but I've always felt that. Walt Disney never made an effort to pass his legacy on to anyone. I think he just assumes that his wife's husbands. Not his wife's husbands. He was his wife's husband. I'm sorry. His daughter's husbands would take over the company, which is, the way businesses usually work back then. And of course, I think his name was Ron Miller. Diane Disney's husband did take over the company and did just an absolutely horrible job and ran it into the ground. So I wish he had found an apprentice somewhere. If he didn't feel his daughters were a good choice, or if they didn't want to do it, I wish he had taken the time to impart some of his knowledge to someone else. But then I guess he never expected to die as young as he did so tragically. I believe it was from smoking, cancer. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I'm excited to see Tom Hanks bring him to life. And I would love to see Disney kind of, have a strong leadership creatively like they once did, because that's what the studio is still running on to this day, the Disney magic. And when they say Disney magic, they mean Walt Disney. All right, so for the final thing today, I'm going to answer one of your questions. And this kind of spins off of this. And someone said, the Academy used to, this is actually from Jeffrey Kerr. It's so nice sometimes when someone's YouTube name is their name, so I can remember it a little better. Jeffrey Kerr, I'll read it, I have it written down here. He said, here's a question. Knowing the Academy used to nominate mainstream films for Best Picture like Jaws, Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Lord of the Rings, etc., and Lord of the Rings 1, obviously, why do you think they should still recognize mainstream films today? I feel very strongly about this. I think mainstream films are what drive the business. Now, of course, there are films that have tremendous artistic merit that wouldn't be seen if they weren't nominated for Oscars. But I think that it's largely the big pictures, and not just any big picture. I don't think you should nominate a big picture just to nominate one, but I don't think you should hold that against it either. It's these phenomenally big movie magic films which I think are what make audiences fall in love with movies. I think they're what capture people's hearts. That's why I was such a strong believer in The Dark Knight being an Academy contender, and I thought it was just shameful the way that was overlooked. You're talking about a film, as much as I didn't like The Dark Knight Rises, The Dark Knight I feel is such a phenomenal piece of filmmaking, and it is the catalyst for the current comic book movie trend. And it elevated comic book movies to something that wasn't like the Joel Schumacher stuff where people just thought it was an extension of Saturday morning cartoons, but it was, it made it something that was considered quality filmmaking, which has just been so crucial to the development of that genre. So to not reward that, I think, was just beyond snobbish and beyond stupid, and just really a missed opportunity for the Academy. They still are hurting from for this day. But I also like to add, I felt Inglourious Basterds was robbed. I thought Inglourious Basterds was a phenomenal film. I thought what Quentin Tarantino did was very bold to rewrite history like that and to tap into like an emotional subconscious that I think is still very raw after a war that it was in the 1940s. And I think that he just really did it in an amazing way. And another great piece of filmmaking. And I felt that should have gotten more recognition. And I do believe that, big tentpole films, when they are deserving, totally should be nominated. And I think that the Academy's, kind of regression into like only rewarding small film because they feel it's fair to level the playing field is idiotic and stupid. And it makes no sense. That's not what movies are about. Why are you taking a socialist or communist approach to awarding film? This is supposed to be done on merit and merit alone and contributions to the industry. And, I think like many moviegoers, I'm tired of seeing some of my favorite movies relegated to just the smaller categories of special effects, which, by the way, should get more respect. And I am upset about special effects and how they're just completely disregarded as well. But that is a topic for another day. Thank you for watching Morning Movie News. Write down below any thoughts that you might have about that you'd like me to discuss tomorrow and any news stories you're interested in. Thanks for watching. Bye.